Hey, and welcome. In this session, we're going to look at the find function and how to create a small search engine. So previously, we looked at various aspects of text. We see that we can use the find function to find things within text. So what do we want to find? Well, we specify that we want to find something, so we could write hello, and where's within a certain text. So for example, this is hello world, and we can have a starting number, but that is not required. So we get here 9. What does this mean, 9? Well, it means, if we can copy this down and then just write an apostrophe there to get the code, it means that if we're looking for hello in this text, we'll find the first hello here in character 9, or in number, the 9th character. So this is the first character. We start from the left. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So here we see that the 9th character, that's when we have hello. So based on that, we now we get where it is in that text. Now here we write in the text ourselves, but we don't have to. We can make it dynamic, so we can write hello here, and this is hello world here, and expand it a bit. And then we see we'll get 9 if we refer to that as well. I'll just put this up here with cut and paste. And if we do find this within that, now we get 9. So it's an easy way to find if we in our text where if it exists, and if it does, where it exists. Now if we write something else new, then we get an error term value. Why is this? Because it couldn't find it. If it can't find it, we get an error term. So how do we deal with this? There's one easy way to deal with error terms in general. We found error terms before. Here we see often error terms means that something is wrong. We've done something wrong. We perhaps should change what we're doing, or how we've entered something in, or we've made a mistake. But here it's not necessarily that we've made a mistake. We're looking for something and it couldn't find it. That's in not all scenarios are we sure that we're looking for something that we can find. In some cases we're looking for this through some text, and in some text strings it will find it, and some it won't. That's okay. So we might want to deal with this error term, as in we might not want it to appear or remove it somehow. And there's a way of doing that by using the isError function. So checks whether a value is an error, then returns true or false. There's actually two. There's isError, and then this is error. Checks whether a value is an error other than #NA, so it's just a more specified version of it. So we're going to use the basic one, isError. And basically, you just use that and we'll get true here. So it's going to be true if there's an error. It's going to be false otherwise. So it's just a simple function that returns whether this is true or false. So what can we then do with this? Well, we can use it with an if function. Now remember, an if function is a logical test function that says if it checks if something is true or not. If it is true, it does one thing, it returns one value or one output. If it's not true, then it returns a different output. So let's look at this. If, for example, this cell C7 is bigger than cell D7, return the value 10, otherwise return the value 20. Now, in this case, there's nothing in both of them. So Excel considers both zeros with regards to these kind of comparisons. So 0 isn't bigger than 0, so we get 20. But if we put in 1 here, we get 10. If we put 2 again, then this is not bigger than that, we get 20. Put in 3, 10, and so forth. That's the if function, the basis of it. We can use this in conjunction with the isError function to, for example, say, and I can copy this with an apostrophe. Oops. I can copy this, and with an apostrophe I can paste it in. We can use that by using a function, by using the if function and saying, is this true? And if that's the case, we return 100, otherwise 0. Oh, and it says not. We can just write true, and then we get 100. True is a function, it's not a text. We see that it's not aligned to the right as text, it's in the middle by default. So we just say, is that equal true? We get 100. So here we see we can transfer this into a true or false statement, which with an if function we can transform it into a 100 or 0 statement, or any kind of statement we want, really. We can make it into, well, if it is true that it's an error, that's not fun. So we can make, for example, text here by just adding in text responses. Boo and yay, get boo, it's an error. If it's not, if we write in hello here, it will be able to find it. That becomes false, that becomes yay. So with this, we can make a nice way of dealing with this. How can we do that? Well, let's combine these three together. So here we have in 3 different ways. Gonna put them up here. Just 3 different functions in 3 different cells. We can combine them into one cell. Let's see if we can do that. So first off, we just copy this find function. Find this here. Let's see if it exists. That's all we want to do. What do we get? We get an error term if it doesn't exist. Let's see. There we go. Yeah. We get an error term if it doesn't exist, and we get the position if it does. So we then see if that's an error or not. So we introduce the isError function here for that output. And we get false. So now we built these 2 functions together. Okay, so that is false. We now add the third, the if function, into this. So these are now nested functions, if you will. If this is equal to, we can add true. We can also, because it will return true or false, we can also make it the false case, the opposite case. So I'll do that. Is that false? If the isError, which returns false or true, as we see here, returns false. If it is false, what's the case? That means we found it. Return a 1. If we haven't found it, we can return a 0, for example. And there, we get 1s, right, new, 0. So that's a way to change this to be the 0s and 1s. Here, for the isError in general, we might want to also use this. Here we see these all combined together to either count it or not count it. But this if statement to see for errors can be beneficial just to either make it so that it's either, if it's true, then that's an error. So we can write here is a problem, a text like that, and a text like okay, for example. And then we get it's okay. Here we get there. Here's a problem. Or alternatively, we do there is a problem and nothing, for example. And that means that we get a list there's a problem. If we instead do hello, we get nothing. So it more easily stands out in this columns if we have errors. If we're not expecting to get a lot of errors, then we can do that. So that's a healthy way or a functional way to do this. That works quite nicely. So let's see if we, based on this, can make a search engine. So let's look here. I have taken the names, which we see here, and I've just made a list of them. And it can be, you know, oftentimes you find a list. Now these are all the same names. We could perhaps have slightly different ones with the same first name but different last names, so different people. Doesn't matter if they're all different people that might share a first name, or if they're the same people appearing several times. For example, if we're looking at reported hours from amongst workers or something like this. But from this, we can make a search engine. So we can make something we're searching for, search for, and we write that here. So let's say if we search for Sam, and then how would we sort of do that? Well, we just do a find function here, find Sam within our text. Now, if we're and we get let's say we get value. Interesting. So we see here, as opposed to regular text, when we're finding something, it is case sensitive. Of course, we can deal with this if we don't care about cases. We can deal with this by, you know, either changing this to be upper or lowercase, changing this to be upper lowercase, or alternatively, if we don't want to do that, zoom in a little, we can make those changes actually in here. So we can just do upper this and upper this. So we just add those functions within here, and then it doesn't matter if we write Sam with small or big letters or something else like that. So that's a way to use upper and lower to deal with that. But we see that here, when it comes to the find function, it is case sensitive. Okay. Now, if we always are looking for this, we would want to lock this, so we can lock it, or alternatively name it, so we can name the cell. So the so it's the search cell. Now get okay, that's already a taken name. So we used to the I can't think of a good name. Lookup value, for example. So we can then just refer to it this. It has now a name. And there we go. That lookup is also taken as a function, so it might not be good to have necessarily that, but okay. We'll use that name for now. So we see we can refer to it by that name. We can take this down, and we'll see we'll get error terms when it's not Sam. When it is Sam, we get that. So these error terms are not that nice. And if we say Löfberg here, for example, yeah, we get the where it appears, which is here on the 5, for example. But these error terms are not that nice, so let's do a dealing with this. We can just see if this is an error or not. So we could do an if. And there are different ways of doing this. We can just do an if is error, which is useful in a lot of cases. We can also do, in this case, just if it is a number, but we'll use the isError function. Often several ways of doing things. If all of this is an error, so we say isError is either true or false. If it's false, it is not an error, and hence we can write 1, and otherwise we can do a 0. And then we get 1s here, and otherwise 0s. Or alternatively, if we don't like 0s, we can add just double quotation marks to get free like this. And it's now easier to see the individual results. Double quotation marks is still used as 0. So if we're adding these together, for example, that one plus that one, we do get value. So they don't like that. In that case, we'll use the 0. Now we can add them together. There are ways to work around as well if you want it to have free, but let's just do it in this way. It's easier. So now we've made a search engine, so we can just do a count or number of items, and that would just be the sum of all these. We add them all together, and we get 3. Write something else here, Svensson, we get 10. So it's a quick way to search for things dynamically. Now again, I use the upper to deal with the case-sensitive aspect of the find function. I named my cell, I named it lookup, maybe I should have named it something else, but I named it. Otherwise, if I don't, if I just write I2, I would have to lock it by adding the $signs. And the find function returns where it is. So I just run an isError. Do I find something or not? And if that's false, that means I did find something. Then I return a 1. If it's not false, that means the isError function returns a true. It is an error. That means it didn't find anything. I return a 0. That's what my if function does. And thus, I get a nice counter here. And then I can just sum up all those. If it's a 1, it's found something. If it's 0, it hasn't. So that's how we can use the find function and build a nice little search engine based on this.